object-oriented programming using Java. So, in our previous lecture, what we have covered so far is that we are generally creating a class. Okay. So suppose if I'm going to create a class named as ABC, and after that you already know that whatever the class you are creating, okay, and if you want to write some business logic, so in order to apply some business logic, it requires some method. Okay. Without method, you will get an error if you are applying some business logic. So let's assume if I'm creating a program having a single class, then you already know that our program should contain your main method, that is known as your public static void main method. Okay. Public static void main method having this your string a your array of, you can use any your variable name of this string data type. Okay, if I want to write AR, that is okay, but generally why we write ARGS, so that we will came to know about, okay, this is an array of string array of which variable name of which, what is the name of this variable arguments. That is why we generally use ARGS. If you are going to write a over there, even in that scenario it will work fine. Okay, so like this. So after this thing, what we are doing, what we have covered so far is that if I'm going to write int I is equals to 0 over there, then this I is known as my local variable. Okay, and suppose if I'm going to write int I equal I over here, then what is this? This is an instance variable. And what we have covered so far is that if we want to access these variables, so these variables are going to be accessed by only with the help of objects. Okay, so without object you cannot access these instance variables. Now, third type of variable are your static variable. In that scenario, what we generally write, we write static over there. So static variables are those variables which are going to be accessed by whom? By through your class name only. Okay. So if you are working in a single class, so we generally don't call the class name of that particular program. But if you are working on your multiple, if you in a program, if you have several classes, then in that scenario, we have to call that particular class name too. Okay, like this. And you know that for instance variable, for as well as for your static variable, you always got a default value. Now, after that, if I am going to ask you about, suppose this is an instance variable. Okay, if I'm going to ask you about, we have to create an object of which class? This class. So how to create an object? You know that using this keyword, the name of this keyword is what? Your new keyword. So using this, your new keyword, we generally in a heap memory, we allocate some memory. Okay, we allocate some memory using this keyword and whatever the instance variable we have. Okay, right now we have only one variable. So what we are going to do, we are going automatically, we will assign the default value of integer. What is the default value of integer? That is 0. So that is why we got 0 over there. Now after that, it is mandatory to write the class name. So here you know that we are calling a constructor. Okay, so whenever you are creating an object, then it is mandatory for you to write new ABC. So using this statement, basically what we are doing, we are creating an object, and here you have to write ABC only, because right now my class name is what? ABC. And one more thing which you know about this thing is that your constructor name and your class name both are same. Okay, so whenever you are calling a constructor, then it should be same. And when you are going to call that constructor, whenever you are creating an object, so if you have a program where there is no where you can see that in this program we don't have any constructor, so compiler will provide us what? A default constructor. Okay, and in that constructor there are no statement. That is why we never got any error. But you know that whenever we are creating an object, then it is mandatory for us to store the address, the memory address, because I am storing this object where? In some memory. So I want to store this address of this particular memory, this particular object. So that is why what I generally do, I create an object. So of which data type? Of your this is the data type. Okay. So I just create over there, and this obj will store what? The address of this. So this is how basically we generally create an object. So now in your labs, I think most of you have already solved most of the problem. So in those problems, what you are doing, you are creating objects, okay? Now after that, what we have covered, the topic of constructor. Now there are two topics. First one is your constructor and second one is your method. If somebody is going to ask you about, okay, what is the difference between constructor and what is the difference between method, okay, so always remember constructors are going to be called only whenever you are creating an object, and generally constructors are used to initialize the variable. So right now we are not creating any constructor, but let's assume I want to create a constructor. So constructors are only, we are going to create a constructor only outside this your any method, okay. It should be inside your class, but it should be outside your any method like that. So how to create a constructor? You just write ABC over there, okay. After this line, you will write ABC. Why? Because constructor name and your class name should be same. And what I will do, I will directly call this thing, and I will. So in constructor, what we generally do, there are no return type, okay. Always remember, if I am going to write int over there, then this is not a constructor. This is what it is, a method. Even I have already shown you about all those things. And generally I am going to write I is equals to 0 or I equals to 10, whatever the value I want to initialize. So this is how basically we can initialize our values. While in the case of our methods, why we use methods? In order to perform some functionalities. So for that, what we do, we generally write method names. So for example, whatever the method you want to create, suppose I want to create a method addition, okay? And you know that this is the name of my method. And what this method is doing, it is performing some operation, okay? And as I told you that there should be some return type value whenever you are declaring any method name or creating any method, okay? So here, suppose I want to make it void, it means I'm not returning any value, and suppose whatever the operation I want to perform, I can perform over here. And in order, so this method is again an instance method. So how can I call this particular method? Only with the help of object. So how to call this method? I will just write obj, because now obj is my reference variable, and I am going to use this dot operator, and I am going to directly write the name of this particular method. So till now we have covered all these topics, okay? And suppose if we are having a static method, so you don't require this object over there, okay? But you know that everything I have covered, that what are the pros and cons of creating a static method and non-static method. Because for static method, you will always get a single memory space, okay? But for your non-static method as well as your non-static variable, you will get a separate memory space, okay? So separately, you are basically performing the operation. It means all these variables are independent to each other in the case of your object. But in the case, if I am going to make it here, this thing as your static, so it is common. Now this I is common for all the objects. So if you are updating, so it will reflect back on mine of on some other objects too, like that. Okay. So this is very important. Now after this thing, what we are going to learn in our today's lecture is our two blocks. Okay. First one is your static initialization block, and second one is your instance initialization block. By the name, you can directly infer that, okay, this is static means we are dealing with class. Instance with, we are dealing with object. Okay. So now you have an idea about, okay, what is static, what is non-static. So generally in instance, sometimes we can call it as non-instance initialization block. And by the name initialization, it means you are initializing some values, okay? So that is why you are performing this in your either this block, or you are using instance initialization. So first of all, we will see what do you mean by static initialization block in your Java programming language. Let's see. So first, static initialization block. So a block named as a static inside a class is called as your static initialization block. So every time, always remember, okay, whatever the operation we are performing right now, like method creation, your constructor calling, or whatever the constructor creation and all those things, all these things are going to be performed inside your class name. Okay, inside your class. So whatever the class you are creating, class ABC, so inside these curly braces you are performing all these operations. It's not like that outside class you are performing. If you are going to perform all these operations outside this class, you will get an error. Okay, so it should be inside some classes whenever you are creating all these your static your object methods as well as your constructor or anything like that. Now what do you mean by static initialization block? So as I told you that you are going to be basically a block. It is a kind of a block. You know that what is a block? It consists of a sequence or a number of your statements. So we are going to put it in a particular block. But what is the functionality of this block? We will see over here. Okay, now let's see. So hence, at the time of class loading, if we want to perform any activity, we have to define that inside a static block. Now, what is a static block? First of all, we will try to learn, and what is its usage later on we will understand. Okay, so the second point I will tell you about later on, so that you will understand. Okay, what do you mean by class loading and all those things. Now, static initialization block are invoked only once at a time. Always remember. And I am also going to tell you about the reason why we are invoking this static initialization block only one. But you should remember, okay, if we have a static initialization block in our program, then it will be invoked only once at a time. Not twice, not thrice, not 0 time. Once at a time, exactly once at a time. Okay, now so why we are using this instead your SIB? Because to initialize the static data member. Okay, and the last point is the static block can only access static variable. This is very important. It means that using a static block you cannot access instance variable as well as your instance method. You can access only static variable as well as static variable. Again, I am going to tell you about the reason why you can access, and I think most of you already have an idea about that, why we cannot access instance variable over there. Okay, so let's go for it. Now first of all, we will see the syntax of your static block. So how to create a static block? It's quite simple. In a class, just write static keyword. And you already know that in Java programming language, our 90 or 95% of your keywords are in your lowercase. Okay, so here static is in my lowercase. Just write static over there, and after that use curly braces. This curly braces are basically telling us about the scope as well as it is telling us about the block. Now this is a block of code, so whatever the statement you want to execute, just execute it. So all these statements comes under the category of what your static initialization block. Now let's see with an example. Just we will try to understand, okay, what is the main uses and basically how we are executing. First of all, how we are executing a static initialization block. So in this program, what we have, I have created a class named as what your main. You already knew about this. Now, after this, what I have done, I have created static block. Okay. So you know that how to create a static block, just write static over there. Use these two curly braces. So whatever the statement that comes under these two curly braces, they are then we call it as that these statement belongs to your static initialization block. Now after that, you know that whenever we are executing any program, so we have to write public static void main. You already know about this thing. And then I am executing, I have written one statement, system.out.println hello main. Now if I am going to ask you about, let's execute this program, okay, what output I will get if I am going to execute this code. So let's go back and go through the definition. So according to our definition, what we said, that this is the syntax of our static block. This is fine. It means we will not get a compile time error. And the second statement, what we have learned in our last slide is that we are going to execute this static block at exactly once. Okay, exactly once. So even though you are not even though we are not calling this static block over here, but automatically whatever the statements that are there inside this static block, they are going to be executed exactly once. Okay, so that is why if we are going to execute this code, so the output which we will get over there is this one. First is the static block is invoked, and second one is hello main. Now, the question that comes into your mind is, sir, you told us that whenever we are executing our program, our JVM will always look for your public static void main. But why it is executing static block? And why, first of all, it is executing? See, first it is not executing your public static void main. First, it is executing your static block. So why it is executing static block? So the reason why it is executing your static block, so let's go through this question. So this question is very valid if some of you got this kind of question, is that why static block is executed before main method? Because in the earlier case, I told you that first of all, it will execute, our JVM will always look for what your public static void main. But why here in this case, it is basically executing your static block first. Okay, so let's go for it now. So when we execute a particular class, so right now, whatever the program I have written, you know that the extension will be what your main.java. Okay, so main.java is my program. Now, after compilation, you know that this code will be converted into bytecode. And once we are converting it into bytecode, it will become what? Your main.class. Okay. It will become what? It will become your main.class. So like in the first lecture, I already told you that whenever you are performing only compilation, okay, during compiler, what is happening? Your main.java will convert it into main.class, and this code is what we call it as your bytecode. And bytecode are going to be executed by whom? Our JVM. It means like whenever we are executing our code, JVM is performing. Okay, JVM is basically executing our entire code. Now what will happen? How basically JVM execute our code? So that is the reason. First of all, what JVM will do? JVM will load our entire program, load our entire class. Okay, load class. So this is the first task of our JVM. Okay, so it will load our entire class. So in our class, you know that we have all these things. So whenever it is loading our class, so in that scenario, whatever the static thing we have, like our public static void main, our static block, automatically, okay, or our static variable, all these things are going to be loaded at what moment, at what time? During when you are loading that particular class. Okay, so that is why first what will happen? JVM loads corresponding dot class file. Okay, that is our bytecode file into memory, because you know that in the RAM or in our main memory, whenever we are executing our code, we are fetching our program from secondary memory to your main memory. Okay, now after that, during the dot class file loading into memory, static block is executed. So whenever we are basically loading that file, so whatever the static things we have, automatically at that time our static block is executed during that time. So that is why I said that we are going to execute those static block only once. Why only once? Because we are loading that particular file into memory only one time. Okay, only one time. That is why our static block in our program will get executed only once. Okay, and after loading the dot file, JVM calls the main method to start the execution. And as I told you, then JVM will look for whatever the where is our main method after that, and therefore static block is executed before the main method. Always remember this point. So if in our program, if we have static block, so that is why static blocks are going to be executed first, then you whatever the operations you are performing inside your public static void main, after that all those operations are going to be executed. Now second question that comes into your mind is how many times this dot class file is loaded into a memory. So like in our program we have a main file, so how many times we will load this your file? Okay, like suppose if you are executing our code, so dot class file, whatever the extension, okay, dot means this dot, this is an extension. File is loaded into memory only one time. Okay, when suppose if we are executing that code, so only one time we are going to load this memory. So only one time static block will be your executed. Now, so this is all about your static block. So static blocks are going to be executed first, then it will go whatever the operation you are performing inside your public static void main. So this is the main point. And you know the syntax of a static block is that you just write static over there and you just write these curly braces, and inside this curly braces whatever the statement you want to perform. Now in a program, always remember, in a program it might be possible that you might have multiple static blocks. Okay, so multiple static blocks are valid in Java. I will show you in an example. And if we are having multiple static blocks, so let's assume if in this program I will create one more static block after this thing. Okay, like suppose if I'm going to create one more static block, static, and after that suppose I am performing system.out, I'm just writing system.out.println hello. Okay, like this. Now if I'm going to execute this code, see, this is my static block. So static block always try to write outside method or constructor like that, otherwise you will get an error, but it should be inside my main class. Now this is my main class. Okay, this is the scope of my main method, and again I have created a static block. So according to our definition, what I told you, if I'm going to execute this program, first of all static blocks we are going to execute our static block. So that is why first you will get static block is invoked. Then in the second line you will get what, hello. Always remember, see, it will not execute main initially. First of all it will execute whatever the static block we have, and then in the third one it will execute our main method and we will get what, your hello main over there. Now, so this is, so what if we are having multiple static block, what is the order of execution? So the way basically you are writing your static blocks, that the way basically you will execute your code. Okay, so here in this case a class can have any number of static initialization blocks that will execute in the same sequence as written in the program. So if you have 5 static blocks like S1, S2, S3, S4, S5 in a program, okay, so what will be the order of execution? The way we have written down all these what your static block. So first of all it will execute S1, then S2, then S3, S4, S5, and so on like that. Okay, now that is the order of execution of multiple static initialization block is executed automatically from top to bottom. Always remember, from top to bottom during the dot class file loading. So that is why always remember, if in interview if somebody is going to ask you about why, because you should know the reason too. Okay, why our static blocks are going to be executed before your public static void main, because static blocks or anything whatever the static we have, that is why I said na, static are basically related with our class. Why it is dependent or related to our class? Because these things are going to be loaded when during at the time of when we are basically executing that particular code. Okay, like this. Now, what are the uses of static block? Now, the question that comes into your mind, what is the use of static block? See, there are many ways. Okay, it depends upon your functionality too. I'm not saying that, okay, for that particular application, it might be possible you might use static block. So you generally, where you will use, where you want to basically apply this static block in your program, whenever you want that it should execute whatever the statement you want to execute before execution of your main method. Okay, So generally before execution of your main method, what are the things you can execute? Only you can execute your static variables or your static methods. If you want to execute your static variable or some static method before your public static void main, then in that scenario you will use what your static block in Java. So see, there are mainly three uses of a static block in Java. So the first is the purpose of using a static initialization block is to write the logic inside a static block that is executed during your class loading. So as I told you that it depends upon your application. Suppose you want that whatever the statement, whatever the code we have, okay, whatever the logic we have applied, I want that it should first execute these number of statements. So in that scenario, what I will do, I will write those statement inside my static block. Now the second one, it is mostly used for changing default value of static variables. Okay, so if you want to initialize, okay, because you know that for static variables we generally got some your what default values. If I am going to write static int a, so you know that you will get what some, if I'm going to use a, the value of a in my program, so you already know that what will happen, I will get the value a is equals to 0 because default value of integer is what, 0. But suppose I want to initialize this values, okay, before using it inside my public static void main. So what I will do, I will directly write this thing inside my static block, and inside I will just write static int equals to that. And you already know that this static block will be executed only once. So it's not like that every time you are going to basically call or execute anything like that, you will automatically every time you will get 10. No, only the first time you are basically initializing the value of a is equals to 10. So suppose in a program, suppose if you want to initialize a static variable, okay, so how can you, so there are several ways, okay, but if you want to apply, if you want to basically initialize using a static block, so this is the way basically you can initialize.
सर
Yes.
सर आप बता रहे थे कि मतलब जो डिफॉल्ट वैल्यूज होती है वो सर कंस्ट्रक्टर जो होता है वो देता है जब तक
No, no,
आप
no, 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 no. I never said constructor will give you the default values, not the default values. Constructor कभी तुम्हें default values नहीं देता है, okay? Always be remember what I said कि जब जो तुम्हारा constructor होता है ना, constructor will give you the initialization value. Basically वो तुम्हें initialize करता है value को, और वो कौन सी value को initialize करता है? Only your instance variable. Instance variable are related to objects. राइट, लेकिन जो तुम्हारी डिफॉल्ट वैल्यू होती है वो तुम्हारा जेवीएम हमेशा प्रोवाइड करता है. जेवीएम विल ऑलवेज प्रोवाइड यू डिफॉल्ट वैल्यू. सो जो तुम्हारे स्टैटिक वेरिएबल, और अगर सपोज मैं यहाँ पर int a इक्वल्स टू समथिंग करूंगा, और सपोज इफ आई एम क्रिएटिंग सम ऑब्जेक्ट, ओके, सो बाय डिफॉल्ट जो a इक्वल्स टू 0 आएगा वो मेरा जेवीएम प्रोवाइड करेगा. बट कंस्ट्रक्टर मुझे डिफॉल्ट वैल्यू प्रोवाइड नहीं कर रहा है. कंस्ट्रक्टर इज प्रोवाइड, वी आर यूजिंग कंस्ट्रक्टर just to initialize some value for that particular value, right? What the point? Okay, so please don't get confused. Okay, so that is why I said ना, जब मैंने starting में आप लोगों को समझाया था, when I explained you this program, then what I said, ये जब ये new होता है ना, यहाँ पर जैसे हम ये new keyword use करते हैं, so आपको ये मैंने क्या बोला था, जो ये by default आपका जो constructor होता है, basically वो क्या होगा, उसके अंदर कोई बॉडी नहीं होती है. It doesn't contain any body over here. But who is basically allocating this I equals to 0 over JVM? So whenever we are initializing, calling this new keyword, so using new keyword, automatically I will get what I equals to 0 over there. But I am creating a memory for which class? So that is why we generally call the constructor over here. Okay, like this. For static variable, how you are going to initialize a static variable? So you cannot initialize a static variable using your using with the help of what your what we call it as with the help of constructor. Okay, because we suppose if we want to initialize the value before we are invoking this your particular main method. So that is why in that scenario we generally use what your static block. So I'm not saying that you will in most of the program you will use all these concepts very frequently, I will say that in very less time you will use these concepts, your static block as well as your instance initialization block. But at least you should have an idea about what do you mean by static block. Suppose if you got some code and over there they have used a static block, then what will happen? And in that scenario, you will say that, okay, this is, I will get an error. No, you will not get an error because there is a concept in Java that is known as your static block. Okay, now. So it is used to initialize static variables of the class. So let's take one example. Okay. So in this example, what we have a class and we have static variables. See, all these are your static variables. It means I can access these variables with the help of your class. You don't require any object. Okay. Now this variable, you can see over there, first three variables are what my static variables. And last one variable is what my instance variable. Okay. It means I can access this variable only with the help of object. Without object, I cannot access this variable. Now after that, you can see over there what I have done. I have created multiple static blocks. So this is my first static block, and this static block I am basically using for initializing the value of what my static variable. So I have now updated the value of ename as what your Roy. Then I am just printing the value of ename inside this static block. Similarly, one more static block I have created, which is basically updating the initializing the value of what your EID, like this. Okay, now, and then what we have, I have created one more static block, and this static block is basically doing what? Again, it is just printing the value of age. Here we are not initializing any value. Okay, I'm just printing the value of age. And one more static block, I am printing the value of company name. So in this program, how many static blocks I am having? I am having 4 static blocks. First static block is this one. Second static block is this one. Third static block is this one, and fourth one is this one. Out of which, in first 2 static block, what I am doing, I am initializing the value, and I am also printing displaying the whatever the value we are basically initializing it. While in the rest 2, what we are doing, we are just printing, we are just displaying the output. Now we have public static void main, and inside my public static void main there are no statements. Okay, and now if I'm going to execute this code, can anyone tell me, like, whether you have to just tell me whether we will get an error or not? Just tell me. Can anyone tell me?
Yes sir.
So where we will get an error?
सर ये कंपनी नेम स्टैटिक मतलब स्टैटिक थोड़ा है, इंस्टेंस वेरिएबल है तो सर.
So your answer and so your answer is correct. Okay, now it means like you know the difference between what do you mean by instance variable and what do you mean by static variable. See, here in this, what you are doing inside this static block, you are accessing what? Instance variable. And in my first slide, I already told you that you can access only your static method and your static variable. You cannot access instance variable because you know that instance variable are going to be accessed only with the help of object and just after whenever you are going to execute this public static void main. So before this, the existence of static instance variable is not there. Okay. So there is no existence. So that is why if we are going to execute this code, see, we will get an error, and the error which we will get over there is again the same. Non-static variable company name cannot be referenced from a static context. Now in the second code, what I have done, I have removed that statement. I have removed this statement, and see, now in this the program is same. And now in this program, I am again having 3 static block statement, and the program is same. Now, if you are going to execute this code, so you know that in the first case, I will get Roy over there. In the second one, I will get 1, 2, 3, 4. While in the third case, so here we haven't initialized any value. So I will get the default value of age. The age is what? Your integer. So I will get the value 0. So if I'm going to execute this code, so see, this is the output I will get. So always remember and always keep in your mind is that you can access only static variable as well as static method using with the help of static block, because their existence is not there. Okay, so their existence will only with the help of object if you are accessing instance variable or instance method like this. This is very important. And second one is that you can use multiple static block. Syntax you already know. You generally used if you want to execute something before public static void main, because all these static blocks are going to be executed before your public static void main, because at the time of your class loading we are executing these static blocks. That is the reason why we are getting why we are executing static block just before your public static void. Okay, so you should know about this thing.
Sir, if we write the static block after the public static void main, will it be executed first?
Yeah, again in that scenario, like even I can show you in this program so that you will understand. Okay, so what the question is, again this question is very valid, so but the definition will remain same. Okay, so here what I am doing in this program, I am going to create two static block, but one static block I am going to write before your public static void main, and one static block I am going to create after your public static void main. So according to our definition, what I said, I told you about that these static blocks. Okay, so suppose make it like hello last. Now, according to our definition, what I told you that whenever you are loading this your file, okay, like after compilation, all these static blocks are going to be executed first, then it will execute your public static void main. So that is why if we are going to execute this code, so you will see that first you will get hello, then you will get last, okay, and then third one you will get what your hello one. Always remember this one. And the order of static block is the way you are writing, like top to bottom. Okay, it's not like that it will execute first to last and then it will execute this one. So the way the order will be top to bottom, like this. Got the point?
Yes, sir.
Now after this, what we are going to do, we are going to learn our second concept, and second concept is again quite similar to what we have learned in our static block, that is your instance initialization block. And now by the name, you can directly refer that now we are using the concept of objects. Okay, but the question again that comes into your mind is, here we are writing instance initialization block, but this initialization we are doing with the help of whom? With the help of your constructor. Then why they have created this instance initialization block? So we will go through it. Okay, so first what do you mean by instance initialization block? So instance initialization block is used to initialize the instance data member. It runs each time when the object of the class is created. Okay, so instance, why we are using IIB? We generally we in interview they don't ask what do you mean by instance initialization block. They generally ask what do you mean by IIB. So IIB is instance initialization block. So it is used to initialize the instance data member. So you already know that what they are data members, whatever the attribute, whatever the data types we are having. Now again, the question that comes, and that question is a very valid. Sir, then why we are using using constructor also we are initializing those variables? Then what is the need of instance initialization block? I will tell you. We will have a one. I have means put one separate slide for that, which is going to tell us about what is the difference between a IIB and what is the difference between means IIB and your constructor. Okay. Now first try to learn what do you mean by IIB. So the initialization of instance variable can be done directly, but there can be performed extra operation. So not only we can perform your instance, initialization, but if you want to perform some extra operation, you can perform. Okay, while initialization of instance variable in the instance of your initialization block. Now this point is again very important, and the point is no keyword is required. No keyword is required. Now again, question that comes into your mind is, if no keyword is required, how our compiler or how can a person can understand whether it is a initial instance initialization or block or not? So we will see in a syntax. Okay, what is the syntax? Here is a syntax, but there are no keyword associated with that particular syntax. Okay, now. So an instance initialization block is only executed. See, this is very important, only executed when there is a call to the constructor before for creating an object. Okay, so whenever you are creating an object, and whenever you are, so you know that whenever you are creating an object, you are calling a constructor. Okay, you already know that, because whenever we are writing new, after that we always write now. So suppose my class name is ABC, so I just write. So what I am doing, I am calling this constructor. So whenever you are basically creating an object, only at that time automatically we are going to call what your instance initialization block to, if we have an IIB in our program. Now, an instance initialization block can not only access a static variable or a static method, so it can access anything. Why it can access anything? Because instance initialization block we are going to access after, when we are going to basically whenever all these static variables or instance variables are going to be means created. Okay, after that basically what we are doing, we are calling it, so we can use it, no issue at all. But in the case of static variables, instance variables are going to be executed or created after this thing, because with the help of your JVM. Okay, so that is why we got an error over there. Now instance initialization block can run many times whenever there is a call to the constructor of the class. It means if you are creating 5 objects, so 5 times your IIB will be called. Now what is the syntax of IIB? See, the syntax of IIB is very simple, and the syntax is just 2 curly braces. So this is the syntax of what our IIB. Now here in this syntax you can see that no keyword is associated. If I'm going to write static over there, then you will say yes, this is a static block. But if you are going to remove it, then you will say that this is an instance initialization block. And one more thing is that again, instance initialization block you should write inside a class but outside methods. Okay, it's not like that you are writing this instance initialization block inside your class and all like that. In that scenario it will consider it as what your block, just a block. But if you are going to create this IIB, this syntax, these 2 curly braces outside your method, okay, but inside in a class, then we will treat or consider it as what your instance block. Now let's take one example. So in this example, what I have done, I have created a class main. Okay, so first of all, what is this? This is a method or a constructor. So this is a constructor. Why this is a constructor? Because name, class name and method name is same and having no return time. Okay, always remember, constructor will not have any return time. So whatever the statement I want to perform, I have performed over here. Now this is what? This is my IIB, instance initialization block. Okay, so after that again I have performed, you can perform whatever the statement you want to execute. So I have executed this statement. Now I have written public static void main, and inside this public static void main, what I am doing, I am creating an object. And whenever you are creating an object, automatically it will call a constructor. Now the question that comes into your mind is, what will be the output of this code? So always remember, whenever you are going to call, whenever you are going to create any object, okay, first, initially, always remember, initially IIB will be called. So IIB will have a higher priority than your constructor, right? So first of all, it will execute IIB. So you can write IIB whatever the place you want to write. See, I have written IIB after this main constructor. So here the order is not at all required. We are not at all concerned about the order right now. If we are comparing with your constructor, and our IIB. Okay, so IIB will always have a higher priority with your constructor. So that is why if I am going to execute this code, so how my JVM will execute this code? First of all, there are no static block. Okay, so there are no static blocks, so it will execute my main method. It will go here and it will see that okay, we are creating an object. So first of all, it will check whether we have any IIB. Yes, we have IIB. So first of all, it will execute IIB. First, it will execute IIB and then it will execute our constructor. Okay, so that is why if we are going to execute this code, see the output which we are getting over here is what? Instance block first, then we are getting 0 argument constructor. Okay, so always remember whenever, so what is your instance initialization block? This is, so instance initialization block will be called whenever you are creating an object, and the order will be first your IAB will be executed and then will get executed and then it will execute your constructor. Always remember. So that is why you are getting this output. Now let's take one more example. Now, using this example, you will understand what is the need of instance initialization block. Now, in this program, what I have done, I'm just going to explain. I have created a constructor. This is what my first constructor. This is what my second constructor, and this is my third constructor. So whether can I create 3 constructor in your Java programming language? Yes, I can create. Why? Because using with the help of constructor overloading. Because here I am not taking any argument, here I am taking 1 argument, here I am taking 2 arguments. So all these things are what different. These constructors are different to differ to each other. Now after that, what I have done, I have created one IIB. I have created one IIB. Now what I am doing inside my public static void main, I am creating an object. I am creating 3 objects. So here in this program, I am creating how many objects? 3 objects I am creating. First object, second object, and third object. But when I am creating first object, then I am calling this constructor. When I am calling when I am creating second object, I am calling this constructor. When I am calling or creating third object, then I am calling third constructor. Now, but according to our definition, what I said, I told you that IIB will be called whenever you are going to create an object. Okay, and the priority will be first it will execute your IIB, then it will execute your constructor. Okay, so that is why if we are going to execute this code, how we are going to execute this code? First of all, because we are creating an object and we are calling a constructor, that is why first it will execute this IIB statement. Then it will check, okay, this is satisfying my first constructor, so it will execute second, and in the second statement I will get 0 argument constructor. Similarly, whenever I am calling my second constructor, again always remember, again my IIB block will again gets executed. So the number of times our IIB will be called how many times? 3 times. So that is why if we are going to execute this code, the output which we will get over there is what? First, because we are creating an object, first IIB will be called, then that constructor will get executed. That is why I am getting this output. Again, I am creating second object. So again, first initially it will execute IIB, then it will execute this thing, then again it will execute again instance block IIB, then again it will execute this. Now the question is when to use IIB. So always remember, you can use IIB. Suppose if you are using constructor overloading, okay, and you are using and having different functionality, but you want to execute some statement and make it common for all the objects, and you want to make it common for all the objects, then in that scenario what you do, you always try to use IIB. So here you can see over there, that is why in all the scenario I am getting IIB, 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 instance block, instance block, instance block gets printed. Okay, only in that scenario you can call it. Otherwise you can directly go for constructor. No need to go for IAB. But always remember, you should know the syntax of IAB. Otherwise, if somebody is going to ask you about whether what will be the output, then you will say, okay, I think this is invalid. I think they have missed the keyword. No, no keyword, and you are using just curly braces inside class but outside method or constructor, then you will directly call it as what your IIP. Okay, always remember this point. So if in this program, let's see what will happen. So in this program, now what I have static variable, I have instance variable. Okay, now in this program I am having static block. I'm just writing SB. I am having IIB. So why this is a static block? Because I have written a static over there. Why it is IIB? Because I am using this thing and it is outside. Always remember, it should be outside your method or constructor or anything like that. Okay, so this is my IIB, and this is what my method. Okay, this is what my method, and the name, this method is what my normal method, what instance method. Why this is an instance method? Because no static keyword is there. Sorry, this is not a method, this is a constructor. Sorry, this is what I am having, a constructor. Why this is a constructor? Because this is of what your same class name and having no return type. Don't get confused with this public keyword. Even if I am going to remove it, it will work fine. So later, whenever we are going to discuss access modifier, then we will tell you about, okay, what are all these things. Okay, now after that, what we are doing, we are just writing public static void main, and we are creating two objects. Now can anyone tell me what, if we are going to execute this code, what will be the first statement that will get, we are going to execute that particular statement? What is the first statement it will execute? Yes.
Static initialization.
Yeah. So the first statement it will execute is what, our static initialization. As I told you that every time, so you can here you can map that static will have a higher priority. Then we have the priority IIB. Then we have a priority of constructor. Then we have a priority of, suppose if we are calling that particular method using with the help of, suppose if you are calling that particular instance method only with the help of instance method. So that is why first of all it will execute this statement. I will get the output. That is what your static initialization. Now after that, there are no statement inside this static block. Then automatically what will happen? My JVM will execute public static void main, and it will execute my first statement. So in the first statement, what I'm doing, I'm creating an object. So that is why we have IIB. So that is why first it will execute the statement of IIB, and I will get the result instance initialization. Then after that, it will check whether we have a constructor. Yes, we have a constructor. So that is why it will execute this statement, and we will get what, constructor over there. Similarly, in the second case, again we are creating one more object. So again we will get the output instance initialization and your constructor. So the number of times you are basically calling that particular object, that number of times you are going to call that particular IIB. So I hope that you know the difference between what do you mean by IIB and all those things. Now let's see and check the difference between instance and your constructor. Okay. Instance block logic are common for all the objects. So you know that here in this case, like in our earlier case, what is happening? Here for all your constructor, all of your object creation, my logic is same. I'm getting the same output. Means I'm calling the same basically block. Okay. So it means it is same, but it might be possible that in your, whenever you are calling a constructor, so you, with the help of, with the concept of your constructor overloading, your constructor logics are specific to the objects. It might be possible, but it's not in the case of your instance block. So if you want to make something common among the objects, write inside your instance block. If you want to make it different for all the objects, go for constructor. Now, second one is instance block will be executed only once for each object during its creation. You already know about this thing, and we can execute the constructor multiple times for a single object by placing the call to them in other constructor. So this thing we are going to learn. Okay, we will see, and it's better if I'm going to explain you with the help of your inheritance. Okay, so there is a topic inheritance over there. I will try to explain you this concept more clearly now. Now, instance block will be executed only as many times as there are number of objects is created in the program. It is not necessary for the constructor, as they may be called explicitly, again using with the help of. So sometimes we are going to call the constructor. So like here in this case, we are calling these constructors. So here we are not calling these constructor. Like for our first object, we are not calling these constructor. But every time we are calling our instance initialization. Okay, and your instance in block are mainly used for writing the common logic. Always remember that is why we are using your instance block, which we want to execute for all the objects. So if somebody is going to ask you why to use instance block, just write in order to make it the common logic if you want to apply for all the objects. Otherwise, constructors are mainly used for initializing the objects. So for different objects, we are going to create different objects. Okay. So suppose if we have a program, like I think you already know about this thing. So if in this program, what we have IIB. This is what I am having IIB. Again, I am having one more IIB. So how many? So you can create multiple IIBs too. Okay, and you know that similar to our static block, the way we have written down our this your IIB. So the like top to bottom, we are going to execute our IIBs too. Then we have static block. I have created two static block like that. So if I'm going to execute this code, so what will happen? First of all, it will search for static block. So that is why we got static block 1. This will get executed. Then it will execute static block 2. Then after that, what we are doing? We are creating an object. But here in this case, we don't have constructor. So what will happen? But here we have multiple what? IIB. So that is why what we will get the output instance block 1 and instance block 2. This is all about our today's class. So in today's class, we have gone through what do you mean by instant IIB, what do you mean by static block, and all these concepts. And if you are having any doubt related to these concepts, you are feel free to ask. As anyone is having any doubt, you can ask. And one more announcement is that from this weekend, like from every Saturday in the evening, like I think most probably after 6 to 7 or 6 to 8, it depends upon your problem. I'm going to create a meeting. I'm going to create a meeting, okay, related to whatever the doubt you have. It is a kind of a doubt clearing session. So it is not mandatory for all. So those who want to attend that particular session, they can attend, and whatever the doubt you have, they can ask for me. So from this weekend, so all of you will get the notification. So those who have any doubt related to any topic or anything related to our Java programming language, they can join that particular session and they can ask me whatever the doubt they have. Okay, so that the timings will be after 6, because I think most probably Saturday is again your working day, means you all
Yes.
so that is why I'm going to conduct after 6. Okay, because I don't want to conduct it on Sunday, because again I don't want that all your days means every day you will have a class and all those things. So that is why make Sunday as your holiday. So for Saturday, that is why I'm going to conduct after 6. So those who have any doubt, they can join the session. Others, they can enjoy. Okay. So this is all about our today's class. So I will upload these slides just after this lecture. You can also go through other lecture slides too. I've already uploaded on LMS. And if you are having any issue, you can ask.